Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi, good morning, everybody. Now, see you again with me, Desi Rahmawati, in the course of Economics Policy in Development. This session, we will learn about the payment balance debt, financial crisis, and stabilization policy. The scope of learning today, we will learn the first is about the state balance of payment policy, and then how about the recent trends in balance of payment in developing countries, and then dimension and impact of the debt crisis in developing countries. And the last, we will learn about the IMF monetary stabilization policy and IMF policy criticism. Okay, now we learn about the balance payment as the introduction. What is the definition about the balance payment? Balance payment is a summary of a country's financial transaction with the world. So that is a summary. You can underline it with a summary, or in Indonesia we can state that ringkasan keuangan suatu negara ya di dunia. Balance payment table divided into 2 or 3 components. Jadi ada 2 atau 3 komponen ya. Ada beberapa textbook yang menyebutkan ada 3 komponen. There any other textbook state that there any 2 component di dalam balance payment. The first is current account and the second is capital transaction. On these materials, I will learn you with the 2 components. Yeah. Okay. This is the table of balance payment. Balance of payment components. There are the components. There are export of goods and services, and import of goods and services, investment income. This is direct pembayaran angsuran utang ya, net money transfer and transfer. This is the total current account balance, and this is private direct investment. Total balance of capital transaction include private direct investment, foreign loans, yeah, amortization, addition in foreign party assets, capital outflow from citizens. So that is the total balance of capital transaction. There any component to about the increase or decrease in monetary reserve transaction, and also the errors and omission. Yeah. Okay, this is the term of in the balance payment. There any definition on the table balance payment. The first is current account. The current account is a part of the balance of payment that contains the market value of export and import tangible. You can underline it with the word tangible. For example, trade in commodities and intangible. For example, shipping services from a country, that is intangible. And then what is capital transaction? On the table of balance payment, we know that capital transaction is a part of a country's balance of payment that shows the volume of private foreign direct investment and public grants and loans flowing into and out of a country during a certain period. Usually we use 1 year. Yeah. So that is capital transaction. And this is there any some other definition of balance payment? Yeah. This is the balance payment. That is the monetary reserve transaction. What is the monetary reserve transaction? Monetary reserve transaction is the balancing part of a country's balance of payment, which shows how the cash or monetary balance and short-term financial claims have changed in response to the current account and capital account. And in the table of balance payment, we know that there any amortization. What is amortization? Amortization is a gradual payment of principal debt. Now, this is the credit and debit in balance payment. In balance, there any positive impact of credit and there any negative impact of credit. What is positive impact of credit? The first is there any average sale of goods and or service abroad. For example, for export activity. Negative impact of debit. There are every purchase of goods or services from abroad or imports. And then any investment income from abroad, any investment negative impact of debit, any investment from abroad, and then any acceptance from abroad, and then the positive impact, any grant or assistance obtained from a foreign country, any sale of foreign stock or state bonds. That is the positive and negative balance payment. Okay, now on your monitor, you look that there any trends in the payment balance in the 1980s era, and then in the 1990s era, and then in 2000s era. What happened within the 1980s era? In this era, it was very difficult period on the balance payment. The third world experienced a quite severe decline current account and capital account. This is a very difficult period. And then in 1990s era, there was a decrease in the current account balance. So many countries happen this situation, and then in the 2000s era, there is a current account surplus in middle income countries. Yeah. So this is the trends. What happened in the world happened in 1980s, 1990s, and 2000 era. Okay, we continue with the causes of reduction of balances in current transaction in the 1980s and 1990s. What happened in that two periods, 1980s and 1990s? The causes, there are any four causes. The first is there any drop in commodity price for especially in commodity oil prices in the world, and also in natural resources. This situation happened in tends to global recession, and then it tends to export protection of developed countries to developing countries. So this situation can push to high exchange rate in some countries, including not only Indonesia, but also the other countries like Malaysia and some countries in ASEAN. Okay. Next, this slide want to show you about the how about the IMF monetary stabilization policy and IMF policy feedback. Is that a good policy or the worst policy? Okay, I will start it with the macroeconomic instability. What is the macroeconomic instability? Macroeconomic instability is a situation in which a country experiences high inflation accompanied by increase in the trade and budget deficit and increase in the money supply. So that is the situation why it called instability. Yeah. And then what is the stabilization policy? The stabilization policy is a series of tight fiscal and monetary coordination that the aim is to reducing inflation, reducing the budget deficit, and improving the balance of payment. That is the stabilization policy. How about the IMF monetary and IMF policy feedback? The IMF is the the international monetary funds have to aim to stabilization macroeconomic situation in a country. But there any depth about these international monetary funds? I want to show you there are any four basic components of the IMF stabilization policy. The first is with the removal of government control over foreign exchange and imports. And the second is domestic currency exchange rate devaluation. The third is adoption of strict domestic anti-inflation programs. And the last is more open to foreign investment and international economy. That is the four basic components of the IMF stabilization policy. Okay, now we continue with the impact of the global economic crisis on developing countries. There any some situation happen in the world. The first is economic growth. This parameter of economic growth, the crisis in the world in 2007, 2008 on developing countries are more resilient to the global financial crisis. This crisis in especially in developing countries, it tends to the value of export. Initially, the value of export fell drastically. World trade volume decreased by 14.4% in 2009. This situation, the decreasing of value export, it pushed to foreign investment inflows. What the situation is? Low import value to medium term after the banking crisis occurred. Meanwhile, the export countries affected by the crisis were relatively undisturbed. And this situation pushed to the developing countries' stock markets. Yeah, this is the impact of the global economic crisis. Next, I will show you the case analysis about trade capital flow and South Korea development strategy. How about this South Korea? South Korea have facing the trade capital flow and South crisis. South Korea is a developing country that has a long success story. So why they now can success it? They have been value about the trade capital and flow. South Korea is categorized by the World Bank as high income country. We know that the quality electronic product from South Korea are affordable price. They do export electronics manufacture and motor vehicles, and they do the promotion strategy. This is the stance South Korean government policies how to encouraging export promotion. The first is with the low exchange rate, special access for importers of intermediate input goods needed to produce export goods, and they do the protection of infant industry atau industri embrio, ya, jadi industri baby, in encouraging export promotion, exemption from tariff on input of capital goods. Yeah, so if you look at the strategy of to encouraging export promotion, what do by Korean government policies? They support the policies and then the regulation for the exporter of in the South Korea. Okay, now in the last session, I want to give you some discussion like this. In terms of what the global financial crisis, now we have facing the COVID-19 pandemic, which is currently widespread throughout the world, has something in common with what happened in the past. I want to hear you what your opinion. It has difference, yeah. If different, in what ways is the current economic crisis different? I want to all of you can give me some narration, yeah, about this discussion session. Okay, guys, I think that is my presentation for this session. Thank you for your coming here. I'm very happy to see you here. If you any question, don't hesitate to contact me. Okay. Thank you for your attention. See you next week. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Goodbye, everyone.